it's Rhea. Wherever you are and whatever time it is, I hope you are enjoying yourself. With less than a week left of October and little to no ink-themed drawings done, I am busting out my beloved inks and getting some illustrations finished. So if you want, feel free to get your own inks out and draw with me as I finish these 3 individual drawings. Now one of them that I show here at the beginning on the left, it is a test drawing, so I technically cut out the footage for it, but it'll likely be a short. I feel like it turned out pretty cute. Before I get started, of course, I'm just testing out some ink housekeeping, if that's a thing, like just swatching my water brush inks that I made to see their pigments, how well I have control over them, etc. I have like 2 self-made water brushes with black ink in them, but they function a little bit differently, and I'll explain later whenever I use them in this first drawing, but just know for now, it's always good to do this kind of preparation before working on a traditional drawing, especially with something as permanent as ink, so get all your testing and theories out the way if you really care about how your drawing will turn out. I feel like this alone could be a sketchbook page, but for now we're just going to use this little strip of paper and keep it moving. But this kind of preparation also includes my infamous list of different ink pens or liners and if they work well against alcohol markers and water, since those 2 are the main ways that I would color something. This is like the base level of preparation, so at least make sure that you have checked your lining supplies for how they interact or smudge before you do your line art, otherwise it can be quite a bummer when you go to color it. And as we transition to this first drawing, you can see that I will have taped down the paper to keep it in place and also to keep the background streamlined whenever I fill it in. For inks, I will be using these Tombow fine liners or drawing pen. Now I use several different brands throughout this video, but I am starting off with these and I picked them up literally like a few days ago at Michael's and they have not disappointed me. Also, I'm pretty sure the one that I use for this, like the thickness that I use, is literally like the smallest one. This is kind of like a reoccurring theme for me as well, but before I say anything about who I'm drawing or etc., just know that this footage is the slowest that you're going to get in this video because again, I draw quite slow in general, but not to mention doing something as nerve-wracking as line art. Oh, I just shudder at the thought, but I've already sliced this into like little snippets of the process as well, so it will make jump cuts. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'd know this is more or less normal for me considering I'm fitting 3 drawings into 1 video. Also, the funny thing about this is no one is telling me to do this. Like, I keep telling myself to keep it to 1 or 2 at most of illustrations in a video, but I truly cannot help myself. But that will change when October is over, okay? Mark my words, unless it shows that the world actually wants my hour-long videos with multiple different art projects with real time and rambling and chaos, but I doubt it, okay? So whenever I tell y'all I'm about to spoon feed you with some bare minimum content of like, here's your 1 cute illustration or sketchbook spread, see you next week, whenever November hits, I'm so serious. I need to spare my back problems and eye bags while I can before I sell it to content creation. Then again, I've really upped the amount of short form content lately, but let's not pay attention to that, you know? Well, actually, you should pay attention to that because like I'm the one that— okay, anyway, let's just talk about this first drawing. Like I said, this is the slowest that you will see me line art in. I think it's like 150% instead of like the regular 100%, so it's just a teeny bit sped up compared to the other ones. The other ones are still digestible to watch, but this one is like, you get that like somewhat real-time vibe into it. It's like finding myself in a universe where I can draw at like a somewhat normal pace. So I hope this speed's okay with you. Let me know your thoughts as well, but alas, behold. And I'll see that I can't talk too much about because he's a spoiler for a future video that I really need to complete so I can finally talk about it. All you need to know is that he's everything and I love him. That's all you need to know. That's all that's important. But no, he's a part of the Persartify series. But that is all I'll say about that. I feel like I just keep low-key trying to spoil it. I mean, honestly, I'm sure I've posted I've posted the character design sheets. I may be on Threads or something like months ago, so I don't know why I'm acting like this is a secret. But if you want to play along, you can go ahead and try to guess what you think he would be a personification of. But as for the process, I think style-wise it's interesting how he comes out. His eyes in particular are styled different than the other 2, and I feel like they're a little bit more of the anime route because of how big they are, but it might not be much of a change whenever you see the others, so I don't know, I might be tripping. I will say I think he comes out as my favorite one that I've drawn, even outside of my favoritism towards him as a character. I feel like I really like his drawing, probably because of what I do at the end with the background. Lining-wise though, this is right up my alley. As I said earlier, I have a reoccurring theme to use the smallest nib possible to start out with, and it more or less makes sense due to my caution with traditional art. It's the same rules as me using a lighter color of marker or watercolor before I go darker, and that's because I am apprehensive of my choices and want to go down the stairs slowly instead of being suddenly dragged into the abyss. Memes aside though, I feel like it's more about control, because with thinner lines it feels like I can control however much I build them up. I can start small and then just stick in them later if I want to, but I also feel like there's tons of details that I'm able to reach with a smaller nib. That's also where I feel like inking comes to life for me for some reason. Honestly, whenever I ink his sweater, I feel like it was even more intensive than the very last illustration that I do. This was actually supposed to be the test run, but then I realized I had drawn 2 test run drawings, so mayhaps I should just jump in and get to line art instead of worrying about it looking bad. Also, if you didn't know this, I'm very reluctant to do line art, especially traditionally. I accepted it as like the common way of art for the longest time, and especially as someone who was drawn to more of the 2D flat side of art aesthetics, often associated with anime, comics, and cel shading stuff, instead of like, you know, painterly traditional styles. So back then I do line art before coloring a spread or drawing with my alcohol markers, but I never felt like I did it well. And oddly enough, with digital art, I felt like it was even worse. I was very unattracted to the line art process since something was always wrong or needing to be changed, and I'd have to go in between all of my countless layers and stress myself out over one small area again. But the past few years and in recent months, I've been more and more curious and also just really eager to reapproach line art and a lot more seriously. No more BSing. I had planned to sit down and just stare back into the lines that had made me nervous all these years until I met the expectations I gained from watching other people. Now, all of that said, here we are. I don't really think I do a job better than average or maybe slightly above that in my own competition against myself. I'd like to think that there's some growth in this process though, because I really did sit down and try my best to lock in, and it can be so intimidating. I don't think y'all understand, like, I'm naturally so anxious and prone to overthinking, so literally every time I got to lining an important part, like facial features or the jawline, my literal head would start to feel weighted and almost like start shaking from trying to keep my entire body suddenly still as a rock. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, don't think about it, but I'm thinking about it, and ooh, don't mess up. Like, maybe the real ghost haunting me is my own brain, but we kind of been new, you know? But I prevailed, and not just through this piece, but all the other ones too, and each time I got a little bit stronger. It's weird because I don't know how the inking is going to appear to anyone else, like, I don't know if it's really cool or mid or what, but whenever I got to the sweater, like, I will say, that's a lot of lines. I mean, like, if you think the hair is having detail, whenever I get to the sweater, it's like, you would think that I was going I mean, honestly, a part of me was, but whenever I came to that part, I was surprisingly calm. It was like a nonchalantly concerned experience, and I know those two words contradict each other, but I really don't know how else to explain it. There's something about line art that is either the most stress-inducing anxious moment ever, or it's like a serenity that stills even my mind and makes me feel like I've gone beyond the stars or something. Like, there's rarely a nice in-between that can be found. But I think it's a common experience whenever it comes to working on very detailed parts of a drawing. It's like, it's exhausting, yet it's healing at the same time and kind of mind-numbing. A lot of this is just me getting curious and simply adding more details and seeing how far I can push it, and I feel like that's just kind of something that I naturally have fun with. It's also kind of like an experiment, like with the hair. I feel like I really like how, out of all the ones that I've drawn in this video, I think hair-wise, I like how this one comes out the most, because it's like, it's not like there's lines everywhere in like each single strand, but I feel like I like the detail that I added here and there, but it could also just depend on like how his hair is compared to like the other characters I draw. But again, I don't know if this looks cool or not. I did realize during editing that like the top part of his sweater past his collar, it doesn't really sync up too seamlessly with the lower part of the sweater, but I feel like it happens to the best of us. It's one of those things where a little bit more planning during the sketch period probably would have saved me there, but I feel like I also just kind of didn't, like, I zoned out probably, and it was kind of just like working on it mindlessly. Each one of these, I know they took like an hour alone to simply just ink, and something that I notice whenever I work on illustrations, I'm sure many artists experience this, is like it's really easy for you to just kind of like not necessarily zone out, but there's a lot of things that you don't notice until you take a step away and you take a break. So I think that was one of those things. But I still feel like the inking turned out pretty cool. Honestly, the first and third drawings are similar in the sense that the inking feels not so much like line art, but also like a form of coloring. I mean, in a way, inking is a form of coloring in itself, but the way that I did it reminds me of those old-fashioned books that I'd read as a kid that like included a sketched-in drawing instead of photography or some cute child-appealing type of illustration. Like, does that make sense? I don't know what to call it. It's just like an old-timey Western ink style European literature, American literature that occasionally has like a picture drawn into it. I don't know. And that's what doing all the details on this drawing made me think of for some reason, where everything has lines instead of like just the outline. I don't know why I do it, but I really felt the need to, and I feel bad because I feel like line art is supposed to be more precise and confident and bold and all that, but here it's almost like I was trying to sketch with pen instead of do actual line art. But I don't dislike how it looks, so it's not like I can be fully upset, and I also know it's simply a strong habit of mine to start sketching my lines as possibilities into a finalization instead of like making strong definite lines from beginning to end like a normal person doing line art. Oh, I didn't even notice we are on the sweater, or we're wrapping up the sweater part. To be honest, that part is kind of like, if it looks super intensive, again, it's more or less just me, like, after you do the first part, you kind of just get used to how it goes and the rest follows. Again, I don't really do a very streamlined job considering the shift between the top and bottom part of the sweater and between the collar, but I mean, overall, I feel like since it was my first drawing that I like jumped into, I think, you know, that part came out kind of nice. And I've always wanted to like do that kind of pattern on a sweater because I know sweaters are like, they have that kind of depth to them for the most part. Not all of them, but generally sweaters that are like built more for like colder weather, they have like those sort of ridges and lines individually woven in, and I've always wanted to like, you know, make that pattern, so I was kind of happy to test it out here. I don't know how accurate it looks, but sweaters can have all kinds of patterns, so. But whenever I get to doing parts like this where I'm like coloring in an area that's generally supposed to just be like black, you can hatch it in like I just tried to, but I also use this Sakura Pigma micron pen, which is like a size 1, like a full-on solid pen nib instead of like a little mini one. Working on this first drawing really opened my eyes to all the supplies that I had around me, because it's kind of like, there's some moments where I'm like, wait, I need to like switch which brush I'm using to one that makes more sense. But in general, again, you can't really go wrong with the 01 because there's so many little details you can add. Again, I really like the idea of just sort of adding to things in the sense where you're not like destroying anything, but you're just slowly nudging it. So that pen helps a lot with that. Overall, I think this drawing comes together nicely, and I'm glad to have drawn him. To reference what I said in my recent video of like using the alcohol markers and my fall-themed spread, there's something to be said about drawing a character that I created digitally, but like in a traditional art medium. It's like, I don't know, something about it feels like they finally came home to me for the first time. Also, as I tested the water brushes at the beginning of the video, yes, now we are drawing with them, painting with them, coloring with them, I guess, just filling in the space. This part is pretty straightforward, so I hope you don't mind me like making the jump cuts extra big because like I'm literally just coloring in the background. It is also a lot of back and forth too, and I'm just going a lot slower because the water brush that I'm using, I switched between the two that I talked about. One of them is a little bit more like lighter whenever you place it down, while the other one is like just pretty dark. But there's something to be said about the way that they dry, because both of them, with the way that they dry, it's like it's not nearly as dark as you would expect. I honestly was hoping that the ink would look as dark as it does whenever you place it down at the beginning, but it does indeed dry. But that said, I feel like overall it still ends up getting like that dark negative type effect, like negative space. Is that negative space? Not necessarily. I just really like the sharp contrast, essentially. I see people do this all the time where they like black out their drawing, and I've done it also in the past. I didn't want to do it for all of them, but I do feel like it just adds such a sharpness to the overall composition, and it especially makes sense here because it's like I wanted the background to kind of seem like it was nighttime and it was snowing. And you can imagine the difficulty of me going around each little like snow fluff And it was hard because I had to go around it like multiple times so I could get the dark pigment of the ink to like really show up. But you don't want to mess up because once when you put ink down, it's hard to make it light again. But that said, it is time to erase. So I brought out my kneaded eraser and my just regular eraser. Honestly, the regular eraser works a lot better for this kind of thing where I go in at the end and try to erase all of the pencil lining. I know I should probably erase it before I start, but there's no in between with that. It's if I erase too much I won't be able to see, so I just figure it's easier to erase it afterwards, and it works just fine. Like I often worry that if I erase too much it's gonna mess up the pigment of the ink, but I feel like everything still stayed pretty solid. And with my final touches coming to a close, I'm now peeling off the masking tape, which, I mean, it still ended up like bleeding through a little bit, so it's not as clean, but overall I think it turned out pretty cute. I'm happy that, you know, the drawing came out kind of nice. Moving on to the next drawing, we have my first of 2 fan arts. This one I was pretty excited for. It is of Harai Kuko from Hypnosis Microphone. You can see I have my little acrylic stand of him here, but yeah, that's the outfit I'm going to be drawing him in. These are the pins that I'm going to be using. Well, sort of. I use that one Prismacolor because guess what? It's an 01, and again, I seem to really like using 01 as my line size. Again, it just really makes the process easier to build things up, and you can see I kind of already like skipped into it. I mean, I did that with the first one too. That usually happens because like the way that I started, something happens with like the filming where like say my camera goes out of focus or something. But in this case especially, I actually started with the 05, I think, the 05 mangaka pin, and then I realized it was too big to line the eyes and that I wouldn't want to line with the 05, so I just went back to the 01 and I was in my comfort zone again. But like I said earlier, things are a bit more sped up. Hopefully this is still digestible for you. I think the most challenging part about this drawing was by far the hair, just because everything else is a little bit more simple. Like, yes, the face, you know, the face is always up for debate on like it being intense to draw, but like for the most part it kind of came together because I corrected the pencil sketch underneath, so I wasn't as worried about that. Of course, doing his spectacles that he wears in this costume. By the way, this costume, or it's not really a costume, it's more like they have a thing called extra wardrobe. Basically, the characters of this franchise have these additional outfits that are occasionally released, and it's like this whole big deal. And this time around, I think this was released in 2022, I think, at the very end of it, more towards like the fall winter season, and so they had winter clothes and I was freaking out because it was the best thing I ever seen. I feel like out of all the outfits, I think Kuko's is my favorite just because it's purple and it just looks very cozy and he just looks so iconic in it. Like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's just a vibe, you know? Like, he just looks so cool, and I love that for him. I'm sure I'll have time to talk about Hypnosis Microphone and its characters more as I make more fan art for it, but this was kind of fun, the fact that I just kind of jumped into this. Normally I'm quite hesitant about doing fan art just because I have a lot of expectations that I give myself to live up to, so I expected myself to hold back a little bit more whenever I suggested to myself to draw Kuko, but I'm glad I didn't overthink it and I just went for something that I knew I would have fun with, and I did, because again, I think this outfit is amazing. His hair was kind of fun to do despite it being like the most challenging part. His hair is normally pretty spiky, but in this specific like fan art, like acrylic stand and everything, it's a little bit more like messy spiky and it's very iconic. Also, I did do lettering at the end, but I don't really like how it comes out. Lettering is so freaking hard. Mad props to anybody that can do this traditionally and enjoys it, because honestly, it's hell for me. I've never really been a fan of typesetting even as a designer, so like having to do it traditionally, it's like I like picking the fonts and I had so many fonts in mind, but it was just too much and I was losing patience, and I'll have to practice some other time because oh my gosh. But outside of this chaos, I feel like I like how Kuko turned out. He has this very naturally wild and fun aesthetic to him, so bringing that out in inking was kind of a fun time. Lastly, we have this drawing of Ari, particularly Snow Moon Ari from League of Legends. It's one of her skins, but I'll be using these Stabler pins. These pins were a really fun set. My friend gifted them to me as a birthday gift. Shout out to my friend Diana. These pins like changed the trajectory of my Inktober. I mean, it's not like I was fully diving into the whole challenge or anything like that, but just because it makes me use inks more around this time of year, I feel like this really helped me prepare for it. And basically it's like this set of 3. It comes in like a set of like 4, I think, because it includes the pencil as well. And it's like this whole set. There's like a whole video that I had to look into on like how to set these up, but basically I had to put the ink into the barrels. It comes with an ink cartridge and 3 different sizes of fine liners, and so you can set them up how you'd like. Even putting them together was kind of like fascinating. It feels like, I don't know, something about it feels so like Transformer with the way that like the pins can be assembled and disassembled. But it comes in 1.2, 0.5, and then 0.2. And the 0.2 is again the main one that I use because it's the smallest, but it just works so nicely. I feel like even the 0.1 is, for some reason, it feels larger than the 0.2. Like the 0.1 compared to my other fine liners, it feels like they're larger than the 0.2. The 0.2 feels so thin and like gentle and delicate, and it worked so well for getting all these like intricate lines that I do in this one. This one is similar to the first one that I did, which is what I said whenever I was working on the first one. So there's a lot of like lines that I make, and it's kind of like more in this sketchy type of way instead of like perfect line art. And honestly, I don't know, again, I just really like how it feels to do that. It feels like I'm adding all kinds of like intricate details, and even though it's not perfect, there's this sort of like organic vibe to it. It was kind of nerve-wracking though, because of all the details that is going on in this drawing, and like kind of just Ari's design for the skin as well. I used to like meme about how like, well, I'm not often drawing like Genshin characters or anything like that, so it's not like I have to worry about like overwhelming character designs, but League of Legends is still definitely up there. Like whenever you go to check out the actual model and stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, why are we doing all of this? Relax. For some reason, I don't know, I guess I just like forgot that that's how intense the model designs can be sometimes, but it does help that there's like resources out there these days, like a lot more than whenever I did League of Legends fan art whenever I was like a teen, so I am thankful for that because it made this process a little bit easier and just kind of piecing things together. But sometimes it is good to challenge yourself and design or do fan art of a character that has a more intensive design. Sometimes it can be humbling, I don't know, it's kind of like necessary sometimes. But in this case, I was mostly just having fun with the line art. I was kind of scared, like even now I feel like the facial features are like, there's something just a little bit off about them. It's like, I feel like if I did this digitally, I would have realized it right away because I could have flipped the canvas, but of course whenever you're doing this traditionally, all you have is what you see in front of you. And I did change the face slightly whenever before I got into inking, but even then I still felt like, okay, I'm just gonna have to go with it. Even though it feels like something's off, I'm just gonna have to go with it. And I guess it would probably just be like the spacing maybe, or like the size. Literally just like 3 pushes from the liquify tool and I'd be good. That's the sad part about this, but I really go ham with this hatching. Again, I just have a lot of fun with it. And even though it could still come off as like messy and stuff, I really like how it feels to like color something in via inking instead of just like coloring it in typically. And to go back to this overall video and like how I thought of like making it, is I was thinking of doing like this thing where it's just a line art compilation, and then another video could be me inking everything, or not inking it, but like coloring it in with like alcohol markers or other inks or etc. But yeah, I thought like that's how it would go. But I don't know, I think at most if I do color these in, they'll probably just be shorts, since I don't think there's a need to like make this a whole video again, since you've already seen the process of it come together here. Now that said, I do end up adding a bit of color to this drawing with my water brushes, because I have some water brushes that I have many water brushes that at the beginning of Inktober I filled them up with some of the inks that I have. And there's kind of like it's kind of like a trial and error, because not all inks work well with that. Sometimes I feel like they might not be suited for just sitting in like this little water brush like mixed in with water like that, because I get some weird reactions, but for the most part it's been kind of fun and I've really enjoyed using them. So yeah, I use I think maybe 2 of them in this, maybe 3, because I have to like color in the blue. It's really interesting how her design is in this skin. Honestly, I do really like it. I think this skin is probably one of my favorites amongst her many skins. Gosh, Ari has so many skins. Off the top of my head, I want to say my favorite might be a mix between Foxfire and the Elderwood skin, but this one is kind of up there. It might have some new competition with those two, because I just really love the splash art of it, like the way that her face is like so cutely round, and I like that, because like oftentimes they make her jawline like super snatched and all that, and I'm like, give her like her cute little like round face, come on. But I digress. My rambles of 5 AM voiceovers has probably need to come to an end, because I don't know if I'm gonna make any more sense, but all you need to know is that I had fun with all these illustrations. This video, like, I'm genuinely shocked at how it came together, because like I had been dealing with so much art block and stuff lately, and I just wasn't really like, I was just in such a hustle mood that I thought I would just feel pressured, but it truly came together in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I genuinely had a lot of fun with all of these illustrations that I did. I got to the point where while I was working on these and like putting them together as drafts, I got so many other ideas for like traditional ink illustrations to do, and some of them I wanted to really do for fan art, some of them I really wanted to do for OCs, so it was just crazy. Like, I got such an overwhelming amount of inspiration that my brain actually short-circuited. It was really weird. I know Inktober is always like this really intensive thing every year for people. It's either that or they feel extremely indifferent and they just don't care about it at all. I mean, I know the original like creator of Inktober, there's some like problems with that, so but in no way do I associate Inktober with the person who created it anymore. I felt like whenever I got into it in a couple years following that, I was really quick to reclaim like my own kind of prompts and all of that. I don't think I ever followed the original prompts. I think I kind of just enjoyed the idea of making prompts and using ink, and that was essentially what Inktober was for me, and it became a very pivotal point in my like art journey where I did want to draw more, and I was drawing like closer to like a daily schedule, and it was something really magical. So I'm thankful that this challenge gave light to that, but now I just kind of use it as an excuse to have fun with traditional art and try out some new things, and that's what I did here. So whether if you did Inktober this year, either through somebody else's prompts, through your own prompts, or you just did your own thing entirely, I hope it went well for you. I hope you had fun. I still have tons of ideas for it, so I don't know how I'm gonna balance it out, but I also figured to just let it run into November and have fun with whatever art mediums I want and whatever projects I want, because who needs a time restraint, honestly? It's cool to challenge yourself, but make sure that you're doing something that makes you happy and comfortable and you're growing at your own pace. I think that's the most important part, but you guys can let me know in the comments what you think about Inktober, if you participated or not, but I hope you enjoyed me putting together these illustrations. But that is all for me today, so thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed your time here today, you can let me know by leaving a like. If you're interested to see more of my content, you can always check out my other videos and subscribe. For reference, if you're new, I am Rhea or Etheria, and I like making art and art-related content on my channel. I tend to post weekly videos, but if you'd like more timely updates, you can probably just continue to follow me here where I'll be most active. But until next time, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I wish you the best in your ink and art endeavors, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day and or week. Take care.